And good evening. It is 7 p.m. on December 11th. I'll call this meeting of the Stowe Board of Selectmen to order. And I will begin with the usual public input on anything that isn't on our agenda. Don't all rush the table. So, okay, nothing. Chairman's comments. I have a few things. First of all, of course, I want to congratulate the Neshoba football team on their 31-0 victory over, I think, Dayton Rehoboth at Foxborough. Really amazing. I think it was the second time in 4 years, and that is really something. I also want to remind everyone that the Stowe Citizens Police Academy is still accepting applications. This looks like a lot of fun. And I have dates here. It's going to run on Wednesdays, once a week Wednesdays, 3 hours a night, from February 20th to April 24th. And that looks like a lot of fun. The Recreation Department is now publishing an electronic version of their booklet of offerings. And if you contact the Recreation Department, you can be added to their email distribution list. And I have a note here, they have lots of great courses like ballroom dancing and men's yoga, which is even painful to even say, but I'm sure there's a lot of good offerings there. And I want to congratulate Tom Ryan and Deb Woods on the marriage of their daughter Megan this past Saturday. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yay.
So now on the public record. If anybody doubts it, they'll be able to hear that it happened.
So we have one set of minutes from our last meeting. And hold on here. It's our meeting of November. Mr. Wrigley.
Preoccupied for a moment.
That's our meeting of November 27th. There is an amended version, very small changes to the town administrator's report, and adding a motion on the authorization for the December 1 tree lighting. If those edits are in red, if anybody wants to see them. Do I have any comments on the minutes?
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes of November 27th as amended.
Do I have a second?
Second, recall it, just revise this date, so we have it.
Motion is made and seconded to accept the minutes of November 27th as revised on December 11th. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, opposed nay, abstentions, and that is unanimous. I have a request. Let us speak to Mr. Gray. Tim, why don't you come on up?
Mr. Gray. Mr. Wrigley.
Good to see you.
Timmy, good to see you.
Long time no see.
Have a seat. So this marks a big transition for you.
Yeah.
20 years with both fire and highway,
I've got 37 with the fire, I'm still there.
37 with the fire.
He's
Yeah.
still continuing on with that. So we'll be talking to him again for that one.
One of our younger guys.
Yeah. What are your plans?
Get another job.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, that's it. He's still working as a captain over in Maine also. Maine
Still
Fire
have 4 more
Department.
years, well, 2 more years, but I gotta stay for 4.
Yeah.
College payments.
Yeah, those never end. Well, on this occasion then, we just want to take an opportunity to say thank you for all your good service to the town. I don't think we or anybody really says it often enough, but we mean it. And, it's guys like you who are really the backbone of this town. Everybody else at the fire department and highway, we know we can depend on you to be there when we need you. You in particular, a stalwart, someone we can count on. I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Here, here. Well said.
Anybody else have something to say?
Well, it's one of the things I think a lot of people don't realize, I know a big part of the reason Tim's calling it quits on the highway is he's been plowing for over 20 years, and it takes a toll on you.
Yeah,
And, he was always one of the guys, I always knew when he went by the house, he'd always beep at his wife out shoveling the driveway. And, he's one of the guys who really put the town above, taking care of some of the things that he had to do at home sometimes. And, every storm he was out, I know he'd be up at, 6 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, whenever he was needed. And so, as well as all the other guys on the highway department. But, I just know from him, or seeing him from firsthand, being across the street, out at all hours, just getting the work done, as you said, the backbone of the town. So it's, the certificate doesn't say nearly enough, but it'd take reams and reams of paper to do that.
it's probably pretty disappointing when, just before winter sets in, we raised the manholes a few inches, but
Oh, I plowed
took care of
over
that.
those were interesting,
Yeah.
let me tell you.
They back down though.
Yeah, I
yeah,
noticed
the
that.
back down, we just want to scare.
Let's clarify.
Go up and down until you catch the,
But,
just where they should be.
But that's it, it was funny, because I talked to Bill, and he'd mentioned that, yep, Tim had gotten out there and, done a great job plowing around them, didn't destroy any equipment, which is always a bonus. But, it takes somebody that's experienced to be able to navigate the hazards and.
Because there was a snow storm when they were raised,
Mhm.
a few inches.
And we had the 8-inch snowstorm.
Yeah, and, yeah, that must have been a challenge.
It was interesting.
Yeah, a little,
No matter how slow you go, you
Little-
still hit them, but
little
you don't
s-
break things.
little slaloming with the plow blade down, so.
And that's it. And talking to him afterwards, he was a little disappointed that he didn't get out before missing the snow. But it's, he's done a great job for us over the years, and like I said, it's just a can-do guy that's always done his best for the town, so.
Well, Timmy, we just want to say thank you.
Not a problem, you're welcome.
And in an official way, I will accept a motion.
Mr. Chair.
Well, let me read it, and then you can say so moved. I'll accept a motion to issue a certificate of appreciation to Tim Gray in the following form. On this 11th day of December, the Stowe Board of Selectmen hereby expresses its sincere appreciation to Tim Gray for more than 20 years of service as an employee of the Highway Department for the town of Stowe. While working for the Highway Department, he also served the town as a member of the Stowe Fire Department and as a call firefighter EMT. We sincerely thank Tim for all his years of dedication and hard work. On behalf of the entire town, the Board of Selectmen wishes Tim an enjoyable retirement filled with good health and happiness and time to enjoy many future endeavors.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve and sign the certificate of appreciation as read.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve a certificate of appreciation for Tim Gray in the form so read. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that's it. Tim, thank you
Notice-
so much.
Notice Mr. Burke's not here.
Thank you very much.
Do you,
Why don't you-
I don't know, I don't wanna,
Shake hands, pass it.
we can take a second. Do you want
Yeah,
me to
but
like?
let's sign it.
hand
and
to
then
him?
he can sign it.
hold up the certificate.
We'll do,
Well,
we'll do the
it'll
old,
show that it's not signed.
we'll do the old missing grin. Is that what you want? Oh, yeah, should we sign it? No, it's,
Nobody will notice
Fine,
it.
yeah,
Chair can have.
so we shake hands
Yeah,
and we
right,
go
it's
like
called a
that,
grab
see?
and grip, yeah, I think you know.
The grab and grip, is that what you said?
Yep. Beautiful. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Job well done.
I'm still around.
Yeah.
I told Mike if he needs anything
Yeah, I
here and there.
think you probably get a few phone calls.
Yeah, probably, but that's okay. I'm still around.
I got down, so I don't have to clock for that.
Almost suitable for framing.
Pretty suitable. We'll get Brian's signature. We'll find him. There you go, Timmy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Tim.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Yay, Timmy.
All right, that was fun. So, let's move on to the discussion of the conservation restriction on apple blossom. Kathy, you have a pile of papers you wanna come and talk to us about? So, we have materials, including your memo, thank you. And essentially this, if I understand it correctly, this is correcting, reforming prior conservation restriction taken by the town in 1992 on a parcel of land owned by Richard and Dorothy Bolton, some of which they still own. This is correcting a fairly technical problem concerning how long it lasts without efforts to renew. Is that fair?
That is fair, and also things being what they are, a 4-page conservation restriction in 1982 has become a 15-page conservation restriction today. I would add, it was Dick Bolton's intent to be here tonight, but he was hospitalized this weekend, so I expect he will be doing well, but he was unable to join us tonight.
So, questions from the board?
Well, it seemed fairly cut and dried. You know, I'm surprised that the old one wouldn't have been in perpetuity, even though the intent was.
I think there's an opinion that it is, and there's an opinion that it's not, but to avoid fighting about it, Dick was willing to go ahead and record a new one, so. And it did give us an opportunity to modernize the language in the conservation restriction, which is great as well.
And the planning board has required this reformation as a condition of?
As a condition of approving the residential use of the barn on the property.
Okay, that's right. So the only question before us, since the planning board has required it as a condition of a permit they're issuing, and we obviously don't really negotiate the CRs, is whether it is against the public interest or in the public interest, and I don't really see the reason why it isn't, and apparently the Board of Selectmen in 1992 concluded that it was, so I have to say, it doesn't seem much for us to do here.
I think it's probably still in the public interest,
Right.
especially to get it, I'll call it codified to being in perpetuity.
I can confirm, in 10, I was there.
Confirming.
There you go.
That's why you can't retire, Bill.
So, any further questions?
None for me.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
I
Mr.
move
Hawes.
that the selectmen accept a conservation restriction from Richard Bolton on 10.1 acres of land off Apple Blossom Way, shown in Middlesex South Registry of Deeds, Book 21-538, page 258, and execute the restriction as being in the public interest.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to accept a conservation restriction from Richard Bolton on 10.1 acres of land off Apple Blossom Way, and execute the restriction as being in the public interest. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that's unanimous.
And I have it to sign, and Linda is here to notarize.
Excellent.
A true gentleman, by the way.
Yes, I happened to be at a planning board meeting when he was presenting, and, you know, he's a lawyer's worst nightmare. He's a guy who does a pretty good job on his own, doesn't really need a lawyer.
Just curious, select board, how did that find its way in here instead of board of selectmen?
I think that EOEA now has that in their model restriction.
One of my pet peeves.
I could offer an opinion about it,
It
but I
conflicts
won't.
with the history of Massachusetts. I want to be on record as not being in favor of it. Not that I'm a misogynist.
Duly noted.
Things should stay the way they were in 1683.
Well, I suppose one of the, one interesting question is a select board actually codified in Mass General Law? I believe Board of Selectmen is.
Mhm.
That's right.
But is a select board. Therefore, does that make this moot? Why not
It's
bind
Board
it?
of Selectmen is the correct term.
Can we cross that out then?
I think, I think.
I don't really
Earth-
wanna give
I don't
the
think it's gonna
registry-
make it moot, but
Just, let's just be flexible.
Probably don't want to
There's been
give the
a number of
registry.
lawyers already who have gone over this.
yeah, but they probably didn't know that fine point of it.
They probably ignored it. which is
Everyone
the
should
right
know
thing
the only lawyer presently on the board is fine with it.
All right.
That started in the People's Republic of Amherst years ago. I was there then,
I believe it.
way
You're the
ahead
cause
of
of all
We
that
meet
mess
in
out
London.
there.
way ahead of its
Yeah, I
time.
know.
And then it moved to Cambridge and Brookline, and,
They were early adopters, Amherst was, about a lot of things.
Um,
Just, they're still active.
their first
Did
town
we,
manager lasted
Did we hear from Brian?
30 years too. Yeah.
I'll give this to you
Tell
all
the
right
story.
now, and you'll be done.
I don't remember
Because
him,
I
but Castillo.
Boston.
He
There you
was
go, and I don't need
I-
your
he
signatures, because I
hired
have them
me
in the book from previous, and I just note line and date.
67.
Thank you.
All right then.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
all set. You don't have
Thank
to watch
you.
paint dry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
All right, correspondence, did anybody, I saw a couple of things, did anybody see anything in correspondence that they want to note for future agendas?
I suppose I'll just comment on I think Bill's already working on it, the letter that had come in to the Board of Selectmen from a resident that lives on or around Treaty Elm Lane.
Okay.
I'd actually talked to Mike Clayton about that. There was, I think everybody's probably seen the note that Bill sent around, trying to, and that the police will be talking to the resident that had the complaint and so on. And Mike's in the loop on that, so I figured they're all getting it taken care of at this point.
So that was one of the things I wanted to mention. I wonder if we could just send a copy of that email to Jesse and Valerie for the Complete Streets Committee, which has a slightly different focus. It focuses on bike and pedestrian issues, but that's a corner that the committee has been talking a lot about and has been talking about signage and things like that. You know, it is a challenge no matter how you're traveling on that corner. So I just want to keep them informed. And I'm glad that the person wrote in about that.
Yeah, just one other thing I just wanted to mention on this is that it turns out that a number of years ago, the Highway Department had asked DOT to look at it. A report was done, and all the recommendations that DOT had made for that corner were put in place at that time.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't mean that further improvements can't be made, but it was known to be an issue, and improvements were made a couple years ago.
So I don't think we can discuss this
Right.
substantively. The resident was just asking for a sign, which is similar to what Complete Streets is thinking about. You're right, Tom, a lot, what can be done structurally has probably been done. The only issue is whether any additional signage might help or be able to be done. I want to call my colleagues' attention to the materials we got for the MMA conference. If you want to go, I think now is the time to let Maureen know about that. And Maureen, you can register us if we want to go.
Anytime.
I would like to go. And if anybody else does, let Maureen know.
Nope.
Please.
Pass on. Had my 20-some years of MMA meeting,
Can I
Okay.
put dibs in on the squirt gun?
hospitality rooms.
So that's the correspondence, right? Everybody else? Good, okay. Liquor license renewals? Well, and I'm just, for anybody following along on our agenda, we're skipping the police officer appointments for, we don't have anything to do, right?
Correct.
Okay. And the 2019 liquor license renewals? Do I have a motion or any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to renew the town's 2019 liquor licenses for the following businesses. Stowe Food and Beverage LLC, 58 Randall Road. J. Nolan's and Son, DBA Stowaway Golf Course, 121 White Pond Road. Nick Spirits, Inc., DBA Colonial Spirits of Stowe, 117 Great Road. Ken's Liquor Shop, Inc., 8 Hudson Street. Robert Page III LLC, DBA Butternut Farm Golf Club, 115 Wheeler Road. Wedgewood Country Club of Stowe, Inc., 215 Harvard Road. Russell's Convenience Store of Stowe, 390 Great Road. the Airfield Cafe Inc., DBA Nancy's Airfield Cafe, 302 Boxborough Road, and Red River Rock Inc., Red Ginger Restaurant, 117 Great Road.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to renew the town's 2019 liquor licenses as stated. Further discussion. Maureen, the only real feedback we need on this is from the police?
No, just know that when they come to pick up their license, they get a current list of regs and dates they may or may not be open. So they're informed well every year.
But did we get feedback from the police?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, police and treasurer's office, everything's fine.
Okay.
Inspections were done.
Okay, very good. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and opposed nay? That's unanimous. So we'll take a minute to sign.
We don't know.
There's one sheet that the ABCC asks us to
So we have to
have you
sign
sign and send back, just at the bottom there.
So yeah, this is not, right.
You know what, just put the ones that are going that way up there.
Okay.
Things in the middle. You signed them already? No, you didn't sign these.
No, but I was handing them to you. and you-
Just put some more of these.
I see.
Either one of us would. Retail versus food, liquor.
I see, not to be drunk on the premises. Got it.
I think I said, are those passing down, or
Nope, these are all
they're
done.
all set? So let's put them with those other ones that are all set. Okay.
Pass them back to that way, actually.
Okay.
Makes more sense.
I figured if I gave them to you again, file, you try to re-sign them.
Yeah, well, there is a space.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're all done with that. Maureen?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, just out of curiosity, are we going, because there are only 5 lines on there, those ones that are renewed, do we need to sign that second one because there are more than 5?
Okay.
I'm just curious.
Do you have to put all the numbers, all of
Did
the?
you-
Each year they give us something new, so I'm not sure how we'll do that, might attach an extra sheet. I mean, I think they just give this to everyone the same. I don't know large towns what happens, we didn't generate this.
Well, should we sign more than one, just to say? Or you don't have one?
Don't have one.
Okay.
Well, if we need to, we can do it, we'll do it in January. Or I suppose we can come in, if you need us to sign something, we can come in and put it in the box. Oh.
We have another one right here.
That's true. Okay, if you wouldn't mind, maybe that's a good idea.
So just sign this, okay.
Of course, it does have explaining stuff on the back.
I noticed, Jim will explain.
They'll call looking for you.
Yeah, Jim will read this, yeah.
Is Brian's an excused absence?
We're gonna require a doctor's note.
Do we wanna move to
Check
sanction?
over.
I meant.
To censure?
Had anybody heard, that's all.
No.
I'm worried, I mean.
No. I
Could
hope
be
he's
on
all
the
right.
phone to check afterwards. Thanks.
I'm not gonna take any shots at him until I know he's okay.
Well, I mean, you never know.
So, So on the strategic, so thank you for that, everyone. Strategic planning, I can make this, I think, fairly quick. We've talked about this at one other meeting, and since then, I've talked to Bill and Rich Eckel and the Finance Committee about it. And the main question for you tonight is whether you want to continue in this direction. So, as I see it, this conversation has three parts. And the goal is to engage in some kind of strategic planning in an efficient way. So not spending a tremendous amount of time on it, but being effective. Keeping in mind that the operating budget, according to our charter, is developed by the town administrator. The whole budget is developed by the town administrator. But of course, we can have input and ask questions. To have input and ask informed questions, we need information. So one of our goals is simply to get us enough information to ask questions. After conversations with Bill, he has suggested and offered that he would engage in some, I guess, joint goal setting. He's in charge by the charter, but he would take our input and that of the FinCom on some of the longer range financial questions. Debt, capital, OPEB, and to some extent, free cash, although we had a large part of that discussion at our last meeting. Or maybe it was 2 meetings ago. Is that fair to say?
That's on the free cash piece or all of it?
Just on that whole thing.
The whole thing, I think, in general,
Yeah.
is what I'm offering, to have discussions, and consultation is what the charter prescribes for me.
Right.
With the board, and agreeing to bring the finance
Bring the
committee
finance committee.
in on it. But those probably are the structural financial issues, from my perspective. I mean, if somebody else had something that
Right.
was equally as important, but the ones you've just mentioned, the four that I would start by saying, they're the more prominent ones, longer
Right.
term, that the town ought to pay attention to.
I want to avoid the board spending its time as a body micromanaging individual departments. It's not really our job. We've all got plenty of time informally to go ask people why they have 3 trucks and not 2. That's how we want to spend our time. But these 4 issues seem to be good things for us to keep in mind. And there are things that I know always become clear to me in May at town meeting, and I always think, especially capital and debt, I always think, boy, I wish I was this clear on it back in January. So maybe we can try to do that this year. I presented this to the FinCom, and they are interested in participating in that. And the way that would probably go is Bill, Rich, and I would get together and talk about how do we have this discussion and have everybody be informed? What kind of information do we need at the table? Make sure people have ahead of time in order to be able to ask questions, get necessary background. And to avoid having the FinCom or the selectmen asking 14 million questions of Bill repeatedly, as has happened in some years. So sort of manage the information to be gathered and presented. And then I would think we would just have a conversation about those 4 topics spread over maybe 2 meetings. That might be optimistic. Informal, on TV, so everybody can see us talking about it and hear what is said. FinCom gets a chance to ask questions, we get a chance to ask questions. And that's one part of what I'm thinking here. A second part has to do with this, and I'm sure you all thought it was pretty weird and touchy-feely, but this touchy-feely, weird SWOT analysis memo, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. As you can tell from the memo, what I'm trying to do is just get department heads to give us 1 page of their short-term, internal-focused strengths and weaknesses, and then their longer-term, external opportunities and threats. Frankly, I don't think we'll get too much new information from strengths and weaknesses. We should hear it. It could be just a chance for people to ask for more money or say, I need money. Everybody needs more money. I'm more interested in the opportunities and threats. That's where a department head might tell us, I know that in 4 years, a law was passed that in 4 years means I'm gonna have to do X. You know, for example, a couple of years ago, Linda, the town split into 2 precincts. You know, that's the kind of thing I'd like to hear about a few years ahead of time, just to know it's coming down the pike. And what I see with that, we get that input from department heads. We all look at it. We do not interview every department head, God forbid. But we just agree on the 4 or 5 who we might want to have in for a little while and ask a few questions. Or we just use that information and go and ask questions on our own. Again, it's just to get information for us so we can ask intelligent questions. That's the second part. The third part is really very informal. I want to, at some point near the beginning of the year, give each of us an opportunity to identify 1 or 2 issues that are non-financial, non-budget, that we want to start keeping an eye on. And you should probably be ready to say you're going to do the lion's share of the work on it, to the extent the selectmen has work on it. For example, I've got some transportation issues that I have neglected for a while, that I want to kind of bring some attention to, bring to the board. Maybe affordable housing, anything. Each of us may have 1 or 2 things, or maybe we don't. I just want to make sure there's an opportunity at some point near the beginning of the year to bring anything like that forward. How does that sound? Ms. Hageman?
Thank you. I understand the first 2. This third part, where we bring in our non-financial interest, what would come of that? That we become our own little subcommittee that promotes that interest of our own? Because you said we'd have to be prepared to do the large bulk of the work.
So I don't think it's even anything that formal. For example, I'm going to bring forward that Maynard's opening of their leg of the Assabet River Rail Trail is a challenge to us. And we've let that issue go for 8 or 9 years. It's time for someone to explore what, if anything, can be done about track road or an alternate route, and to report back to the Board of Selectmen at some point, and I will do that.
Okay.
It might be an opportunity for you to say, you know, there's always these permitting hearings on affordable housing before the ZBA or the Board of Health. The Board of Selectmen has taken a position in favor. We really should make a point of going to some of these meetings and saying that. The board, the ZBA, they like to hear that. The applicants like to hear that. We've taken the position we got. I'm not putting words in your mouth, I'm just giving you an example. Things that you just want to bring attention to. A few years ago, I kind of did it with the library. The library had said, you know, they're a little separate over there. So we made a point of twice a year, Melissa comes in and does a 15-minute PowerPoint, which I think we've all gotten some benefit from.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of things. Things you want to shine.
That's fine.
A lot of the job of being a selectman is just shining a spotlight on stuff. So it's really just things you want to shine a spotlight on this year.
But without monetary
Just on that part.
impact?
I mean,
That-
if.
Just that third point, that's.
Just on that third point, I'm just trying to separate it out from the budget stuff. I don't want to neglect the other things that we can shine a spotlight on.
Mr. Chairman, I've just, general comment. It's laudable to say, keep it to 1 page. If I was a department head, I don't know how I would do that, given your 4 categories. Like, and you don't have any room for explanation of any of the points, other than just listing bullet points.
Well, I mean, I certainly think we could, I did want to put a limit on it, and one may be a little ambitious. You know, I really don't want, and I don't know how you guys feel, but I really don't want 15 pages. I don't want the spreadsheet that they give to Bill. I know how to get that if that's what I want. I want a narrative. And I don't just want a laundry list of, I want more money. I want an analysis of, here's what I do well, here's what I don't do well. I will tell you, I've done these on a 1 page with just a little box. And part of the challenge is condensing your thoughts down to 2 or 3 sentences. But I hear you, 1 page may be too much. I just don't want 15.
How
Or
about no more than 2?
it may be, I'm okay.
W.
I mean, what do you guys think?
I've done these before, and it's usually been a 4 to 8 hour session,
Really?
ripping the company apart. And
It only took 4 8 hours.
well, and the thing is, you're in a room with 15 people, going around and debating whether they belong on there, they don't belong on there. I mean,
So,
and then they get put aside. Nobody ever looks at them again.
so I'm not talking about any kind of a thing where we call the department head in and we start picking apart that. That's exactly what I want to avoid.
Right.
I'm trying to get a page or 2 for our purposes, a little bit of communication directly from the department heads to us to highlight things we may not know. As a manager, I've done these and found, I didn't want to, I hate doing all management exercises, but these I actually found to be useful because it made me sit down, close the door, and really think about what we do well, what we don't do well, and what's coming down the road. Let me tell you something, and I have to say that in all honesty, if you guys don't want to do this, I'm not going to be insulted.
I was scared when I first saw it because
Okay.
of my past experience. When I saw your explanation of what you were looking for, I think spending a half an hour on it might be doing a real drive-by, but I think if somebody takes a look at this and thinks about it and then sits down, they could probably do, bang out, as you said, bullet points, and then they can think about it but try to keep it to, as you said, a page, and then maybe throw in a narrative of a second page tops, but I'm.
Well, let me
I-
ask you a tougher question.
Yeah.
Let's assume, so, one problem is the department heads aren't gonna wanna do it. I don't blame them. I'm just thinking that once they sit down and do it, it actually won't be that bad if they, but, assuming they do it, do you guys want this? I don't wanna shove this down your throats, and,
I think it might be, I think it would be good for us to hear, especially in conjunction with your other longer-term strategic planning. I am interested in the threats and opportunities, especially the threats. I see some threats coming forward where it's getting harder to find qualified people for certain positions. Things like that. I think it would be good if different departments told us about some of the challenges that they might be seeing coming down the road. And the thing is, with the strengths, it gives them a little bit of an ability to tell us what they think they're really doing well. So, and then the other stuff kind of falls in between. So when I saw, that you weren't looking for a whole, sit down, everybody gets together, hashes this out, yada, yada, I felt a little bit better about it. And, but I don't want to make it a large burden on people either. But I think it could be interesting that some of them maybe have thought about, I can see, the handwriting on the wall, but you know what? What's the proper way to convey it? And this might give them an opportunity to throw some stuff out that we might go, holy cow, yeah.
I wanna hear
It's a good
from,
find.
okay. So that was not an enthusiastic yes, but it was a yes. I'll take that. But I wanna hear from Ingeborg and Don. Don has a lot of management experience in the public sector, and Ingeborg probably has more management experience than any of us.
My objective situation is, we spend so much time putting out brush fires.
Right.
We don't look beyond the end of our own hands sometimes as to what we can focus on. And it may very well, some people may say it's a burden and try to think of something, but on the other hand, some of the departments might say, particularly under the threat sort of thing. I don't want to have them see this as, we're encouraging you to be self-congratulatory. But if you can put a couple of strengths in there, that's fine. But particularly the threats on maybe, and I don't know how you separate that out from financial kind of things. I mean, some department thinks they're gonna need some big piece of equipment down the road. That's kind of the purview of capital planning. So where do you draw the line?
Well, see, that's a good example. So let's say a department comes in and says, we need a new building. But we know that they've asked for that building, that's on the capital plan. I don't, personally, I would feel like, I don't think I need to talk to them about that because I know that capital planning is talking to them about that. But if somebody comes forward and says, 5 years from now, there's a new requirement that's gonna require something else that's not on the capital plan, that might be worth having somebody come in and talk to, or talk about. I remember a few years ago, the requirement to redo the floodplain thing came up, and it caught us all by surprise. That's the kind of thing that maybe could come up in this exercise. Ingeborg, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I got a couple thoughts. There's certainly, so broader brush, you've been saying departments. Do you also mean committees, like SMOC that doesn't have a department? Sorry, I couldn't resist.
So I kind of don't, but should I?
SMOT has a big role in this town, and it's not a department, and, but it's always, it has its ability to support Stowe in achieving our affordable housing requirements is very important to the town's planning.
So I'm fine with having SMOT fill it out. That just raises the question of, do we have every committee, do we have the open space committee fill it out?
Well, I don't know, that's something we could think about. I mean, so I don't want to explore that right now, but that was a question. The other part that I was thinking that's positive, you've already given some examples. Another example that's very frustrating, for example, to the Conservation Commission is that the boat wake damage on Lake Boone is phenomenal, and we're getting permit requirements all the time, but there is no management of speeding on that lake. And so that's like, so who does own Lake Boone? And it's the environmental police, or we have one boat out there. So should we be talking to the police about, what's frustrating to the police about managing Lake Boone? Because the consequences are phenomenal down there. Just, that's one example. And another example is something, I recently went to the interdepartmental meeting this week, which I didn't know existed, but it's a department where all the police, the fire, and I was gonna ask you about this, police, fire, all social services, council on aging, board of health, different nonprofits, came to talk about mental health support in the community. And they had a guest speaker come and talk about the services they provide, NAMI, which is National Alliance for Mental Illness. And it was very interesting to me, and some of the departments felt the system that we needed help. They need help. And, I don't want to point them out, I'd like to, but so things like that, and so that would be, the rec committee was there, the rec department was there, our social worker that we funded was there. So that's sort of a proactive, bigger picture question of that the Board of Selectmen, it could be a budgeting issue if we do want to support a service that costs money, things like that. But that's the kind of thing where we try to be proactive, and there may be any number of these kinds of things. So I think it does make sense. I am sympathetic to your point that many times these things never get looked at. And to the extent they never get looked at is because they're not really broken, right? So maybe what we do as a result of this exercise is find the ones and prioritize 1, 2, or 3 of them that we work with those departments that need the support the most.
Well, actually, then we're stepping on Bill's toes. Because I was gonna say, I thought you were gonna say, we each prioritize 1, 2, or 3 who we wanna talk about or explore more. But we can't get into whether a department needs more resources for mental health.
That's not what I meant. I meant to bring it up, as you said earlier, to bring it up to the board for information.
Okay.
Right, I understand the limitations of our role.
Okay. And are you okay with this?
Whatever you guys want.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, but are you, I mean, we're going to great lengths to make sure that it doesn't
Look, I don't,
get into micromanaging.
there are competing interests and needs here. To the degree that you ask any department in the broad terms here without further identifying and defining exactly what you want, invariably is going to come down to a budget item. They deliver services. It's the cost of community services that they spend all their time. Resources that they need, additional manpower, rolling stock. So I think in the end, it's gonna be difficult to separate the two.
Right.
But having said that, I'm not offended by that. In the end, I still have to do my job. I get this kind of thing each year from them. It's not an acronym or anything, but when they have to explain to me what it is they're asking for and why, and there's very little we do now that doesn't cost money. I mean, the fact of the matter is, I think if you looked at what you're asking for, more of the board's mission statements, where the threats are, looking out, affordable housing in general, what are the competing interests and needs, I almost think you'll get more from the boards and committees that these departments work for, where they do. We have a mixture, as you know. We have a hybrid system where we've got department heads standing alone with no board or committee they represent. And then we have the Conservation Commission, the Planning Board, the Board of Health, the
Staff.
library, and they're distinctly different animals, even when the budget's submitted. Because a department head doesn't have to, I don't require, because there's no need for it, there's no one they report to. But in the case of the Concom, for example, the budget that comes to me, I need to know that the board, the Concom has seen the budget as presented and voted to support it or not before I entertain it. Now, of course, if you don't have a board or committee that you report to as a department, it comes directly to me. But invariably, a department is an operational creature. I mean, that's what most of everything they do. It doesn't mean that they don't look longer term, but even then, the capital planning committee, long term, it's all how much money is needed each year over the 5 term, rolling stock replacement, building, infrastructure, resources. Having said that, I still gotta do my job. What it could mean is that the Board of Selectmen, having heard from a department where what they've talked to you about, in fact, will require money, then you can decide or not to give me some direction or not on that matter if it's shorter term. I don't, as I said, my job is to produce a budget in consultation with the
Right.
selectmen, and I've always had an open and free, individually and collectively. If you want to get
Right.
more involved in the budgets come to you, you can look at them and do. Over time, it's probably been the matter that the town administrator develops the budget with more on an individual basis than the whole board. Consultation, ideas, members call me, and I take, and the same thing with the finance committee. I mean, I entertain any legitimate comment, thought about the budget from any source, but primarily it would come from the Board of Selectmen or the FinCom, and I don't see that changing necessarily.
I don't either, and I actually, after this conversation, which has been good, I think we're all on the same page. I think we all need information in order to be able to consult intelligently, but I think all of us understand that it's with the purpose of consulting and asking questions, and we're not gonna be calling department heads in and moving people around.
Well, actually, now that I've heard Bill speak about this, and he hears this already, are we then asking the departments duplicate effort? That's what I was thinking when Bill was talking.
I'm thinking that too, and he does hear it. He hears it in a different
Well,
format.
it's not only that he hears it, but that the boards prepare it in a way. So we need to skew your thing just slightly to be more long-term than short-term, or external only, like the fact that FEMA requires a new, or that there's a stormwater management thing that's changing with EPA, and how's that affect the
So
town?
what if I changed it to try to emphasize long-term opportunities and threats? And then, instead of strengths and weaknesses, just asked, what are the top 3 things you want to work on this year?
Right, what's waking you up at night? You know, so they
What are
can
the-
actually think about it, and just some of these things that we've all had examples of, you know, the boards don't quite know what resources they may or may not have, and so they can think about that, and then when they have the budget discussions with you, they may have more, I don't know, maybe they're already all focused, but, you know, the idea that regulatory changes are coming down the pike, or that there's significant environmental damage down on the lake, you know, and that's taking up a lot of the commission's, you know, things like that.
So I'm gonna rework it to be more longer term, and that gets it out of that separates it out from the budget.
Exactly, it's not the, you know, immediate.
Right.
Right.
It's not an operational function that
It's
we're
more
trying to
just
get.
thinking, how is your board or commission, or excuse me, your department going to change? What is going to, and how are you preparing for the changes that are?
And I think, speaking to those departments that have a board or committee, this ought to be directed to the department head and the board combined collectively, because the longer-term mission statement, so to speak, the boards clearly and committees are directing that effort more than the department head is. And it's a collective, I mean, basically it flows from the board to the department head with regard to implementation of something. I think what might be helpful, from my perspective, is that for this kind of exercise, starting by reviewing our master plan, and even our governance agreement. I mean, one of the things I suggested to you is that maybe time to organize the Charter Review Committee, which is prescribed as a requirement in the charter itself, and we're past due for that. But that's the kind of, when you read the provisions of the governance agreement with their expressed and implied intent, and you take a look at the master plan, they function to serve the kind of thing that you're talking about, but they get produced, and then so the governance agreement I need to deal with, because to do my job, you know, and other things for governance. But governance is a term that affects everybody, and not necessarily in a budget way.
Right.
The master plan is similarly. Now, there clearly are some things in there that will take money over time, but it's, when you read that, and that's another thing, master plans are required under the statutes, they get done and they get slipped on a shelf.
Right, it's like
And they
all
take
this-
years. We had a committee here, because we decided to do it ourselves instead of hiring a consultant at great expense. And I think it was, and the committee was large, represented many of the departments, but again, not from a budget perspective, though. If you look at what the longer-term goals were in delivery of constituent services, and what kind of culture and expectations, I mean, those are the kind of issues. And I think starting by, because I don't think the master plan, to be truthful, has been brought up as a focus or as a source document in any conversation that I've heard by any board in a long time. And yet that's precisely what it was designed to accomplish, and why it was made a statutory requirement.
I think the last time it was mentioned was in support of low-income housing, as a matter of fact, a couple of years ago.
So I'm not hearing a consensus on this part. I'm hearing a consensus on the financial stuff, the 4 topics, the joint goal setting, Rich, Bill, me talking about how to streamline the information. I'm hearing I'm hearing somewhat of a consensus on the non-financial stuff. I'm hearing more question marks on this than I am answers. I'm hearing unease.
No, I
No?
think we just need clarification. It's not unease. It's just that we're a little all over the place. I don't want to have the departments or a committee or whatever duplicate what they're already doing. But
Well-
the fact that we're looking, I mean, the comment about master plan committee, towns are required to do so many reports, hazard mitigation, master plan, open space, and all that stuff positions us for grant funding and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
The current master plan is now 8 years old.
And is that a planning board jurisdictional thing, and why are we stepping on their toes?
It's a whole, no, it's actually technically, I think, ours, I think.
It's shared responsibility.
Shared responsibility, yeah. And I just looked at it a couple of weeks ago. There are whole sections that, a lot of it deals with water in Lower Village, which we then addressed in 2013, but now it's becoming an issue again. It's relevant, but it is dated. It is 8 years old. A lot of it was focused on the Assabet River, which was a big issue in 2010. Not as much now. There's mention of the Harvard Acres Water Company, which is now
We don't mention
all
it.
gone. So, I think by way of background, I think we should supply each selectman with a copy or a link to the master plan. That's probably step number one.
Link, yeah.
Link.
Don't make copies.
And let me redraft this.
Yeah, because I think you're headed in a great place, and I appreciate the work you've done. But I think it just needs to be clarified a little more so that we're not.
So let me redraft this, and I will focus on what I'm hearing everybody say, focus more on long-term opportunities and threats, what wakes you up at night kind of thing.
Yeah, what changes, what's happening?
How's your department or committee gonna change? Address it to the department heads and the chairs. What the hell, we'll just send it to every committee. Make it 2 pages, now 1.
Well, the thing is,
I
if
can't read my handwriting.
you're cutting it down from, a SWOT analysis, make it 1. Make it 1 page, and it's your biggest concerns.
Yeah,
So-
that's it.
I would do this myself, if I was, say no more than 2 pages, and then leave it to each department, because some are more concise as writers, and I can tell you that from my own experience, and others
Okay.
are.
And some
you know?
can't write at all, so there you go.
So,
Yeah.
I'd give some leeway there, 2 pages, up to 2 pages. The other thing you may wanna mention, again, hinting at helping from my own experience, we've got bylaws, leave aside zoning bylaws, because that gets full attention. We've got a full set of general bylaws, that if you went into them and looked at them,
Right.
And speaking about the Lake Boone matter, regulations, there's continued frustrations by their board in what and how to better manage under their regulations, setting expectations on what's allowable and not. I mean, again, not a financial thing, but boy, as a practical matter, that's a tough one to,
It's a hot potato.
yeah.
I mean, not to tread on your turf there, Don, but my experience is, some people have 4 docks and others have 1, and it's just, whoa. And the boats are out of control, and, anyway,
That kind of
Okay.
thing.
that kind of thing, exactly.
So,
Exactly.
I feel like I have enough direction on this, and I take it from everybody that Bill, Rich, and I can start talking about the other part.
Go for it, in my
Okay.
opinion, yes.
Sure.
Okay, and I will bring this back at our next meeting, and we're about to talk about when our next meeting is. Okay, thank you for that, so, that's good.
Well, thanks for doing that, I think it's very nice.
Well, I don't want it, I want it to have a purpose, though I also recognize that maybe it's just a first step. Maybe we do this, it doesn't quite work, and we do it differently the next year.
Or, yeah, we start and you adjust, right?
Right, and there's nothing
It's
wrong
the
with
beginning
that.
of a process.
Beginning of a process. Okay,
I do a lot of that.
like, yes,
You can't get any better.
okay.
Nobody else is
Um,
great at that.
All right.
So, Maureen kindly pointed out to me today that the 4th Tuesday in December is actually Christmas. So, I'm gonna be here, I don't know about you guys, but I'll be here. No kidding. I'm assuming we don't wanna
Really want
meet,
to.
I'm assuming we don't wanna meet on Christmas Day, and there is sort of a tradition of not having the second meeting in December. Maureen tells me that there is nothing very pressing that we need to do at a second meeting. You're gonna get us the budgets for the selectmen department that we have to approve, but January 8th should be okay for that. I think that's our next meeting in January.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. So, does anyone feel, is there a consensus not to skip our, is there a consensus to skip our second meeting in December?
This is something pressing that we need to do.
Ingeborg smiles, and that smile said, "Are you kidding?"
That was my smile.
You know the answer to
Are
that.
you really
Why-
asking
why
this
do you have to
question
ask?
out loud?
Yes. So a little telepathic communication there, I
School
appreciate
kids,
that.
they object to getting out early, the school kids go.
So, okay, so we're gonna skip that. Just go through the process. Just go through the process.
Well, you didn't ask my fellow board members what their opinions were.
I got yours, that's all that counts.
I concur.
It was a very sarcastic smile, so.
Yes, it was.
I think we need to have a meeting just so we can say we did it.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna
well,
do
you'll,
it.
do you
You're
wanna
not
call a
serious.
vote on that?
I wasn't gonna vote on it.
I
Well,
want,
we have different of opinion now.
Do we?
No, I'm just kidding.
He's kidding.
I
Yeah.
want to concur with our
Take out
distaff member.
Yeah.
I think you just
Just
threatened
staff.
me.
All right, Mr. Burke.
I didn't see anything.
I got it on tape.
It's on tape, yes.
So we're not meeting in the second half of December, and Bill, your report, mainly about Lower Village?
Yeah. Essentially, I gave you the highlights.
Yeah.
And we were able to accomplish what we had hoped we could accomplish in the time available to us. And I'm comfortable. I was down there as late as today, finished up some things tomorrow, which was basically tightening down behind the curbs so that, sidewalk curbs. Backfilling the top coat did go down to the post office. Yeah, actually, the limits of work from where Mike stopped on the chapter 90 tied in with that piece, so we've got another 650 feet that is finished off. And lowered all the structures. There were 40-something structures that had to be lowered. And I'll tell you what, that Tango company, the sub that ET&L brought in,
You got done fast.
Fast.
Yeah.
Oh, Christ, they
Yeah.
were fast.
It was pretty impressive.
I remember early in my career when I was a director of planning and development in the community, and I was doing my first community, I was a community development director. I'd done planning, but not community development. And I was having the first pre-construction meeting, and it involved a couple of companies from Ludlow, and Portuguese owned and run. And we were talking with the utility companies about trenching and all the rest, and just how much work could get done, how quickly. And when I heard from both companies from Ludlow who were going to put in the sidewalks and the curbing with them, because utility companies were saying, those sidewalks gotta be, those trenches gotta be open and closed, and sidewalks going down, and we're running along. And I remember the owner, in his broken English, the Portuguese guy, said, "You won't be able to keep up with us. I got a backhoe operator, a man with a bar, and a man with a shovel, and we're running 1,000 feet a day." And I went, "Son of a..." Well, I'll tell you what, that's what these guys just did. If you hear about it, you say, boy, but that's what they do. And they did a good job at it, but they put in 2 days. And then our highway guys paved around them. As they were moving down, our guys were coming through. So there was a lot done in a short period of time, and the weather held, we were in that weather pattern that I wasn't certain that was gonna helpful and get done. But they did, and they finished up yesterday. So we're buttoned down from the winter, and it's safely passable, and it should hold up. Not perfect, but under the circumstances a month ago, I wasn't certain we'd get to this point, but we're there.
I rode my bike through one day, probably around noon, and there were trucks, and I smelled asphalt, so I was very encouraged.
It's a nice, sweet smell when you need it, right?
And the next day, I went through, and everything had been lowered, and it looked like asphalt was down. I
Well,
didn't think it was 2 days, I thought it was
that
one.
included what was gonna be a center island, where the curbing had been roughed and everything.
Right.
That came back up, our guys helped with ET&L, and we brought it, we stacked it down at the highway barn, and then they co-patched around that as well. Plus the structures, plus the curbing, plus the transitions, which had to be matched up.
Okay,
So out of a lot of bad luck, we had some good luck when we really needed it, so now there's time for decisions to be made longer term.
all right.
I explained to you that what we thought we had for a candidate to come in, decided to stay with the department that he was with, and I think we probably know what changed his mind for him, and God bless him. And so we've decided at this point to go re-advertise, post to fill that spot.
Okay.
So,
Questions for Bill?
We had a couple good candidates, and
yeah, it happens, you know,
Yeah.
we've gotten through with just one or two, but we didn't this time. But look, we'll find, you only need one, we'll find somebody.
That's
the market. Liaison reports, but.
Just a
Oh, I'm
question.
sorry.
Have we heard anything back from the dam committee,
The damn committee or DCR?
DCR?
All right, so what came through, yesterday? From DCR, is a form letter saying now we have to come up with an emergency action plan, which is the next phase, and we've got until December 19.
So the word emergency is not to alarm people, it's their standard language.
So we've
Right.
got a year to come up with it, so it can't be too big of an emergency by definition, so. And so Mike and I will talk, I forwarded it to him, you guys have a copy of it for your correspondence, and talk with our consultant, find out, all we've really got are the references to the CMRs and all their guidelines and everything, so I'm not gonna read them all. I'm gonna talk with Michael and the consultant and find out, okay, what is, and what it does, it identifies and defines how you frame up the plan, what needs to be included in it, and all of those things. So it's the next phase, until they tell us, get to work, boys, you got to make some changes, that's,
Okay. Thank you.
So, any other questions for Bill? Thank you. Anybody see any reason why Bill can't be excused to return to the friendly town?
No, sir.
Thank you, Bill.
I did want to just mention that I will be competing for an open selectman seat in March in my hometown, now that I'm coming down the stretch. I served 20 years ago, and I served gratuitously as an unpaid part-time TA.
How do you know it's open? Is the
5
filing deadline passed?
He's scared away the opposition. No one would dare.
We run a little earlier in our town. Crazily, we have the election the first week in March, and have historically, it can get pretty nasty out there. But I did want to, I mentioned it to Jim, but I wanted to let you
Or
folks know.
glutton for punishment?
Yeah, I was gonna say that too.
Well, in retirement, I want to do what some of you folks did, and I've done even when I was working, is give back to the community that it's my hometown. And we've got a lot of challenges. We're from the part of the state where mature industries, skilled tool workers and all the rest. We need to work a little harder at it.
It's a beautiful town with a beautiful downtown and that common.
The North Quabbin area,
Yeah.
what we are finding is that more and more people are, when I first started here, and I was living in Greenfield at the time, 70 miles away, I was the only one on Route 2 at 5 o'clock in the morning until I got past Leominster. Now the fact of the matter is, when I jump up at 5:20, there's people coming from the west that I joined, and it slowly but surely grows, and they're at peak, they have it on the Boston traffic when Route 2 starts backing up, just as they do anywhere else, and it's true. So more and more folks are coming out that way, in part for the prices, obviously. You can get more for less for property and housing, but, the quality of life out there, we've got the Quabbin, we can walk to Canada if we want to. We don't have to buy any property up to do the kind of things that here, for people that want the outdoors and walking in the woods and
Yeah.
biking in the woods and all the rest of it, that's ours. So that attraction
It is
is there,
beautiful.
so it does help. look, economic development drives community development, in my opinion. And I firmly believe that, in creating jobs so people can provide for their family and the goods and services that come with those jobs and people having disposable income, that's business, that's America. People.
But you got a couple of old mill buildings downtown, right?
Yeah, and I'd like to fill some of those, but
Yeah.
probably affordable housing would be it's not gonna be. But anyway, there's plenty of enough work to keep a person like me and, well, presuming I get elected. I won once there years ago, so
I have a feeling, so. all
they've
right.
forgotten.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay,
I'll
safe
talk
travels.
to you.
Hey, Merry Christmas too.
Oh, yeah.
I hope Santa's good to
I'll
all
talk
you
to you,
here,
but, yeah.
Me, not so much, but I.
Yes, hopefully Santa hasn't been paying attention too closely to you. We'll do liaison. We'll start with Don.
Some of us, a couple of us at least, went last Friday, Saturday. The rescheduled date that I would guesstimate total attendance. It's awfully hard when you're
What's the subject?
adult height.
The tree lighting.
Christmas tree lighting.
Thank you.
It's hard to estimate the number of people that are this tall, scurrying around everywhere. But I would feel very safe in saying it was probably at least 25% more turnout than last year, which was the first venture at it. I had very little to do with it other than just bless it and show up this year. But again, kudos to Karen Stams, who originated the idea, and particularly the Lions Club, who kind of adopted it as one of their own. And I was being cynical. I thought, well, I guess they're doing that so they drag people in there to buy Christmas trees. And they shut down their Christmas tree operation so that it wouldn't be a distraction. But the Lions Club, along with the other service clubs, do a great job. And thanks again to the community spirit. And I think that's something that'll continue to grow over the years. And I'm glad to have a little piece of it.
And don't forget the fire department for bringing Santa Claus.
And the highway department for providing the lights
Yep.
and everything. It was a good community cooperative effort. Like when commission met last week, I think we have gotten to the end of our tortuous review of rules, and it's basically, as has been alluded to, much of what makes us gnash our teeth is the lack of authority to do something.
Right, exactly.
It's even occurred to me that the commission was created in 1941 when there was no state authority anywhere. Each community could license boats on their own. Obviously, that's been co-opted. But since we have no enforcement authority on anything, as we found out a couple of years ago, one could even raise the heretical question: do we really need a Lake Board Commission? Going forward. I don't know.
Well, I'm sorry, I'll wait till you're done. I
And,
was just gonna answer that
but
question.
I mean, and the frustration that Ingeborg mentioned a while ago is one that I hear a lot of, but they get a different perspective on it. And that's this new class of boats that creates these giant wakes deliberately.
Yeah.
So that it used to be water skiing, you wanted to keep a very low-profile wake, so you could flash back and forth. And these things, some of them, they ride literally 8 feet behind the boat, riding the surf, riding the curl of a wave. Some of them even do it without a tow rope. I don't know how they time the boat just right so that you stay on top of it, like surfing. So you want a 4-foot wake.
Wow.
And some of those boats are great, at 3 to 4 feet, and they're designed to do that. There's probably only 5 or 6 of them on the lake. And their effect is disproportionate to all kinds of things. But you can't ban them, and I won't get into it anymore, but it's one of the frustrations that we're having to deal with. But I guess we're at a position where we're gonna be handing off our recommendations for filing those town meeting warrant articles in Stowe and Hudson. I have one snag that's developed very recently, but absent that, that's what'll happen. We saw I don't know, maybe we didn't see it, a Tri-Town.
It got postponed.
I'm just glad our colleague isn't
Right.
here tonight, he'd probably have an aneurysm. That was scheduled for December, Tri-Town to be held in Lancaster. And just, was it today, or yesterday, got the message that, oh, so sorry, please, they're postponing it to January. On one hand, maybe it's a good sign that the spirit of cooperation which exists with the present school committee and the three administrators is taking the pressure off the pressure cooker to get answers to questions that used to vex us when that wasn't the situation. Maybe that's the case. In which case, one could argue, maybe I don't need Tri-Town. But we haven't had a meeting in a year, and nothing's happened. You know, nobody's, well, with one notable exception, nobody's making a lot of noise about it. That's it.
Okay. The only thing I wanted to report on, Don and I were just there, so I'm on the Lower Village Subcommittee. It's a subcommittee of the Planning Board. And they hired a consultant to do a marketing analysis for Lower Village. And essentially what the marketing analysis does is it looks at, you know, what kind of shops and businesses we have down there. And it looks at people in town and using demographic information. Where do people like us, what do we buy and where do we buy it? And they use some survey data. And there's some very good news, you know, a lot of people in town go to Lower Village often to buy things. The top list of businesses is nothing that would surprise you, you know, the hardware store, the liquor store, things like that.
And Shaw's.
Shaw's, obviously. The big drawback, the big, what they call leakage meaning things that people who live in town are buying outside of town, are restaurants, casual dining with wait staff. That appears to be the big opportunity for Lower Village business-wise to expand. More competition is coming online in Maynard at, what do they call it? The Parker Street.
Former Clock
Oh,
Tower
right,
place.
yeah.
There's a 110 Grill going in there and a
Mexican restaurant.
Planet Fitness, which could compete with Stowe. Anyway, so long way of saying that interesting report. I've asked Jesse in January if he can come in here and give a 10 or 15-minute version of it, presented to everyone. It's a problem that the planning board and this board meet on the same night. But it raises the issue of water. You know, all this stuff about restaurants in particular hinges on water. The report certainly, it's a marketing analysis. It doesn't go anywhere close to how do you solve the water problem. But it is a conversation, it's a conversation we haven't had in a while, and that it is, I think it is time that we had it again. And I just want to give my colleagues a heads up that the conversation about water in Lower Village is probably going to become an active one. Probably time for it to do so.
I would appreciate that because, you know, we haven't had, as you said, discussion about it as a board. And I don't know what the status of it is. I'm not asking you to go into it now. But all I know is all of the difficulty we went through to get the easement, you know, for the well.
Which was like 7 years ago now.
Yeah.
Or 6 years ago now. And it
What's
hasn't-
happened and how come
hasn't
we don't have
happened.
water flowing through there? It's-
Right.
would
And
be a
those are
good discussion.
Those are very good questions. And what can the town do? You know, there's a whole spectrum of options. Some of them are huge conversations, some of them are smaller conversations. But, so anyway, that will be an issue that is coming down the pike, and I'm going to try to tee it up for us in some way in January. Tom?
The Town Hall Restoration Committee is still moving forward, albeit at a slow pace. We've had a couple glitches, but hopefully we'll be doing more work at the beginning of next year. And, that's
That's
that.
it? That your daughter got married?
That, my daughter got married,
Okay.
and we had some good candidates, and, you know, we interviewed them, what was it, last?
This is for,
This is
for husband?
this is a separate sentence.
No,
We have
Another
good candidates for
paragraph.
son-in-law.
Right, God.
We hope we picked the right one.
no, he's a good guy, he's a
An
good guy. I
arranged
got-
marriage, that's how rumors get started.
Yeah.
No, you know, it was funny, last Tuesday, it was just before I left, and I'm like, I can't give up this time. But I ended up, you know, it was Tuesday morning we interviewed them. So
Oh,
we
for
did,
the-
for the police officer position, you know, I'm leaving Wednesday morning at 6 AM, and I'm like, I got too much
Yeah,
work to do.
that's tough.
So we did it, got them, all right, good guys, no thanks.
All
So-
right. Ingeborg?
I have nothing new on my committees, and I sort of gave you, I went to this interdepartmental meeting. Do any of you know what that is?
I hadn't heard of it before you.
Yeah, so it's this, it might have been organized by the social worker who is leaving to work full-time in Boxborough, so we have an opening there, but,
Oh, just, why don't you, these meetings, how often are they held?
good question, they're quarterly meetings.
Okay.
And it's all the groups and some churches and nonprofits that all work together to support the town's social service needs.
Oh, okay.
And the meeting I went to was just specifically about mental health, because they had a guest speaker, and the chiefs were there, and Council on Aging, Board of Health, Rec, they have a whole list. So, you know, I can't really report on it because I'm not a liaison, I just was there for one meeting, but I found it to be very proactive of Stowe to be so thoughtful and thinking about the services that our residents have. That was very interesting.
I'd like to see us get some kind of information on that.
Sure, I can ask, so our social worker is leaving.
Yeah.
So they are looking for someone. There is a woman who's, I think, taking acting, but she maybe just really, I can certainly reach out and find out if someone could come in January or February or something.
Yeah, and just give an overview of what this group talks about.
Yeah, yeah.
I was on the board of the community chest very briefly for like a year, but I remember being surprised at the number of nonprofits that are active in Stowe.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
partner especially with public safety.
Correct.
And it makes sense when police show up at a residence and there is a domestic violence situation. They need someone to help out. They need an organization that the spouse can go to.
And it's
Get
not
out of
always
it.
available. And our public safety officials are trained in this, you know, the whole jail diversion program.
Right.
So I was very impressed with what I was hearing. So,
Okay. There being no further business before the board, do I have a
Other than to
motion?
wish everyone, all of us
Oh.
back and forth, happy holidays.
Happy
season.
holidays, everybody, all of you, everybody at home.
See you next year officially, but.
Yes.
Before
So-
then.
So, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Unanimous.
okay.